Hello everybody, welcome back to another review. Today I will be reviewing these new 4-inch scale action figures from Finding Nemo and The Incredibles. These were just released pretty recently. I got The Incredibles one at Amazon for $14.99 back in January, but I've been pretty busy with college, so haven't gotten a chance to actually look at it and review it until now. And then the Finding Nemo one I got from Target just a couple of weeks ago, actually, like just in time to be home to review this over spring break. So without further ado, let's get into these great new action figures. So these are part of the Storytellers line that they've been doing for about a year now, which has unfortunately replaced the 7-inch line. The 7-inch line was so much better, in my opinion, but the Storytellers line, they're still nice too. Back in 2022, or 2023 rather, they had packaging specific to the Pixar movies. For some reason, for 2024, they've gotten rid of that. So now the new Pixar releases like Nemo and The Incredibles are just using the same packages that the Disney releases, like for Lilo and Stitch or Aladdin or Lion King, are using, which is unfortunate. So taking a look at the package, you can see there's like, they got rid of the Luxo lamp and the Pixar ball. I'll put up a screen grab from a previous review that I did on the Wall-E and Up Storytellers a couple of months ago to show the package differences, and I'll also put a link in the description and the card suggestion in the top right hand corner to watch that video if you'd be interested in that. So for the two pack sets I will be reviewing today, we have Finding Nemo, which includes Nemo, Dory, and Pearl. Oddly, it says it's from Finding Nemo, but both of the screenshots from the movie they show are actually from Finding Dory, the second movie. On the back of the package, we can see the 3 characters included, Nemo, Pearl, and Dory. And you could also see a different Storytellers 3-pack that is also available from Zootopia, which is not a Pixar movie, although there is the Pixar logo right there. Moving on to the Incredibles package. This one includes Mr. Incredible, aka Bob Parr, Mrs. Incredible, aka Elastigirl, aka Helen Parr, and Jack Parr in a super suit. This one, the renders that they use in are also Incredibles too, and same thing with the Finding Nemo package. It has the logo for the first movie, but both of the screenshots from the movie that they include in the package are actually from Incredibles too. And again, same thing over here. You have stock images of the 3 of them. You do have a Pixar logo over here, but again, the other Storyteller one that they're saying is also available is not actually a Pixar one. This is Aladdin, which is Disney. So let's open these up and let's take a look at how they are out of the package and do some comparisons to some up to the 7-inch line. One thing that I forgot to mention before I opened up the packages is that behind the toys, you can see these nice renders that were printed onto the cardboard. You have one of the Omnidroid in front of the city from the end of the first Incredibles movie. And you have a nice shot of the Great Barrier Reef from Finding Nemo and Finding Dory. I'll start my review with talking about the Incredibles figures that were included. So you're looking at Mr. Incredible. He looks great out of the package. Again, you could connect him to the Pixar ball. He had, so to start off with how you could adjust him. His head does rotate 360 degrees, which is a little bit stiff at the beginning there. His arms have 2 points of movement at the shoulders and at the elbow, and that is the case for them both. So far we are up to 5 points of rotation. His waist can do a full 360. His legs can move out like that. And he also has a ball joint at the knees. So in total we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In total, Mr. Incredible here has 10 points of articulation, which for a figure that's relatively small, he is pretty good. It's a bit more than any of the other 7-inch and 4-inch scale figures, to my recollection, at least from the Pixar line. I don't collect the Walt Disney Animation Studios line. Mr. Incredible cannot stand at all on his own. So because of that, they did include this clear Pixar ball with a 1 peg to stand him on. This is the first time they've included something like this in a Pixar Spotlight Series set. It reminds me of what they used, the Storytellers set. It reminds me of what they used with the Spotlight series, which was a premium 7-inch line that has not gotten any new releases in a while. I don't think it will be getting any more, unfortunately. Those balls were black, and they had several different pegs. This one's clear, much smaller, only has 1 peg. You can take Mr. Incredible. His left foot has a hole in it right there, which you could just put onto the peg. And that will allow him to stand for display. And he does look great like that. Comparing the Storytellers Mr. Incredible, which is the much smaller one on the left view of the camera, to the 7-inch scale that was released a couple of years ago, which is on the right view of the camera and is much bigger. This is a comparison of the two of them. So it looks like the new Mr. Incredible is about half the size, which would add up to the fact that the Storytellers line is approximately half the size of the 7-inch line. If I had to guess, he's probably about 4 inches tall, which does add up with what the line is. Although I honestly do not have a ruler or measuring tape on me at the moment, so I can't actually do that measurement right now. Comparing him to the 7-inch line, it appears that they did not bother to change his facial expression at all, which means that it looks the exact same. As for points of articulation, the 7-inch scale line actually only has 2 additional points of articulation that the 4-inch scale line one does not, which are that the 7-inch ones, his hands are able to rotate. So I'm honestly pretty surprised that for reducing it to half the size, they actually kept all but 2 of his points of articulation. So that is great. On the flip side is literally just a scaled down version of the exact same figure, exact same facial expression, exact same costume, which is like what I said in the Wall-E review, where they literally just copy and pasted Wall-E. It sucks. It's just like the same thing, just in a different scale, which I guess is good depending on how much space you have. But I mean, just in general, I think bigger is better, especially when you're just talking about scaling something up or down, when it's literally the same thing otherwise, the same molds and everything. Plus, you also do lose 2 points of articulation with the smaller scale, which isn't a huge deal, but still. For a second Mr. Incredible comparison, now on the right we have the Spotlight figure, the Spotlight series figure, which is also in the 7-inch scale, but is a much more premium version. This one is quite a bit different. For example, he has a different head that you could swap out. His fists can be changed out to different poses. And just in general, it's a much more premium figure for much more expensive as well. It's like, I think it's like the 7-inch scale figure is, I believe they were originally like $13. Now if they're still made, probably $15 now. So the Spotlight series was $40, probably $45 with inflation now. The 4-inch scale line with the Storytellers, that's in a set of 3 that retails for $15, so 5 apiece. So to start off, we will start off with a very quick comparison of the Pixar ball here on the bottom. So the Pixar ball is literally the exact same graphic, but scaled down and made clear instead of black, and a significantly reduced number of pegs. Comparing these two figures as the figures themselves and not just the stands, he is obviously wearing the same costume. The hair is the same but scaled down. However, it is a different facial expression. So the facial expression I have in here is a bit different than what we have in here. And then for our 2 alternate expressions from the Spotlight series figure are these 2, which are also obviously quite a bit different than what we have here on the 4-inch scale line. This was something that was the case with a lot of the Spotlight Series figures. They swapped out they changed out the expressions. There might even be alternate expressions for the characters in a couple of cases. Whereas, as we've seen several times before with previous iterations of the Storytellers line, a lot of times they just scale down the basic 7-inch one, not a super premium one, just your standard 7-inch one or interactable, and that's your 4-inch scale figure. So that is the case for Mr. Incredible here. Going back to the core 7-inch scale line to not the Spotlight series, this is the comparison to Glory Days Mr. Incredible, who you can see on the right in the blue and black suit. So when they made this was literally just a reskin of the regular Mr. Incredible 7-inch figure, so the expression is also the same. So by extent, that means he is also the same expression as we have here on the Storytellers figure, but I figured I'd just show him for comparison's sake, since it is part of the original line as the other Mr. Incredible we're comparing him to. Just taking a look at the suit differences, which is pretty obvious, just amazing colors. You can see how the Incredibles logo has evolved from the Glory Days to the present day, or present day in universe. As you can see, the facial expression here is still the same, but scaled down, just like we saw with the regular suit Mr. Incredible. And points of articulation are the same as the core scale one. So again, you're missing 2 on the new 4-inch scale one. The blue suit, Glory Days, it's not available on the 4-inch scale. It's only the 7-inch scale, and it's not in the Spotlight series either. Moving on to Mrs. Incredible, I was able to get Mrs. Incredible to stand on her own. It took a little bit of finagling. I wouldn't exactly call it easy, although with Mr. Incredible, I could not get him to stand without the stand on his own. Mrs. Incredible, it's possible, but not exactly the easiest. It depends on how you ever pose, what you're placing her on, I'm sure. However, she does also have one of the holes in the feet, so if you need, you can also attach her to you can also attach her to the stand. However, there is only one stand included with the pack, unfortunately. So you have to pick or choose which one you want to put on the stand, which sucks. I don't know why they would put holes in 2 characters and only include one stand when they're both either impossible or difficult to stand on their own when their feet are so tiny. Anyways, moving on to the figure herself. This is a nice figure. We're to Mr. Incredible. She is quite a bit shorter. In the movie, she could obviously change her height at will. That is not the case with this figure. I literally just got Mr. Incredible stand for the first time on camera, or not. Moving on to points of articulation here. Her head is able to do a full 360 and can nod up and down slightly. Her right arm is able to go in a full 360, also be extended out like that, is on a ball joint. However, her elbows do not have any articulation at all, it seems. And the same thing on her other arm as well. Her waist is able to do a full 360 as well. And her legs are able to widen up like that, but there are not any articulations in the knees themselves. Comparing Mrs. Incredible to her 7-inch counterpart that was released at the same time as the Mr. Incredible 7-inch figure, we'll now take a look at these as a comparison. So shockingly, the expression is actually slightly different. She does look slightly more aggressive or ready for battle, if you will. The way her mouth is, her eyes are, like her eyebrow is a little bit down. The eyebrow's not actually there, but from the way it's molded. Although her hair is unfortunately the same hair, but scaled down. Totally 6 points of articulation. Your head, 2 shoulders, waist, and 2 legs. The 7-inch figure has the same points of articulation as Mr. Incredible, so we lost half the points of articulation here with the 4-inch scale, but we did get a different expression, so take that as you will. If you care more about displaying, then I'd say this is a plus in that you have a different expression, even though she's a lot smaller. If you are a kid or have kids and play with this, then I'd say it's a minus that you've lost a significant amount of posability. Last but not least, from the Incredible set, we here have Baby Jack Jack and a super suit. So this is the only one who is very easy to stand his own. He's just in a sitting position. He has 0 points of articulation, so he is stuck in that pose. Comparing him to the Jack Jack from the 7-inch scale, the one in the same costume. We're at 1 point of articulation. His head was the only point that moved on the 7-inch counterparts, and now we're at 0 points of articulation. Comparing their expressions, this is once again an example of Mattel just taking what they made for the 7-inch line and scaling it down without making any changes to the molding, only making changes in terms of reduced functionality. So, just like Mr. Incredible, same expression. Although I will say the 7-inch scale action figure does look like it has slightly darker skin, which is unusual. Other than that, though, I do not see any differences. And to just do a quick comparison to some of the other 7-inch scale Jack Jacks that are out there, here we have them compared to the Demon Jack Jack from Incredibles 2, Water Jack Jack from Incredibles 2, and Fire Jack Jack from Incredibles 2. Moving on from the Incredibles, I will now get into the Finding Nemo set. I'm reviewing the same review here. So to start off, here we have Nemo. So compared to the 7-inch counterparts, the only 7-inch counterparts were part of the Featured Favorites, which is like a mid-tier line. And that was a bit unusual with Finding Nemo because they didn't actually make like just action figures. They actually took took Nemo and Dory's homes from Finding Dory and like made that part of the sets. Then the toys, then the figures themselves ended up being like really small. So oddly, this is actually the opposite in most of the typical case. So typically, when you go from 7-inch to 4-inch, unless your name is Wally Reeve, you get much smaller. And your Wally Reeve, like I ranted about in that review, you stay identical. But if you're from Finding Nemo, you actually get scaled up, which is really nice. The negative, though, is that means we're probably never going to get crushed in this line because he was in the Feature Favorite lines and was pretty big in that line. So to put him in scale with the other Storyteller scale lines, he'd have to be huge because you'd be taking the 7-inch scale and making that even bigger in order to make it to scale with the other 4-inch scale figures, if that makes sense. So getting into Nemo, he has his back fin back here goes back and forth like that. He has the lucky fin right here, which also moves. I'm thinking this is some sort of stand. I didn't see that in the movie, but I'm thinking this is just some sort of stand right here to make him stand easier. He does stand nicely on his own, or sit nicely rather. His fins up here do not move. And this fin right here does move as well. So Nemo has 3 points of articulation. He sits nicely. Comparing Nemo to his 7-inch scale counterpart, which is oddly the tiny one on the right of the video, he was given, it appears, a different expression, or at least a slightly different expression. His mouth is a bit more open, and you can see his teeth and tongue painted clearly, although there could be a difference of not actually changing the expression, just they scaled him up from so small where they didn't paint in those details. It was harder to see, to making him huge, where now they have to put in those details. So I don't know if I would give Mattel the benefit of the doubt of actually making a new expression, or rather just taking the old one and putting more detail into it. But this Nemo does have more points of articulation than the 7-inch one, who only had the back fin being able to move. And while we're on the topic of Nemo, this is the anemone that was included with the 7-inch scale featured favorites line. It was nice in that it also includes these little stands that you could prop the characters into to make more of a diorama or display piece. So the Finding Nemo set was a bit more, in my opinion, for display rather than play. Whereas the featured favorites, they are definitely more for play than display. Although I will note that they are not bad toys. They did make sure to actually put that in the Target description as well. In the product description at Target. Next up would be Dory, who is also pretty big as well. She actually is a little bit more awkward to stand as well. Like here, she's still in her default pose that I took her out of the packaging. She's a bit on an angle here. She does not have those pieces on the bottom that Nemo has that helped him stand, or sit rather. So Dory has, I would assume, the same articulation as Nemo, which is her back fin is able to move. Her side fins are in ball joints. And that appears to be it for her. So once again, only 3 points of articulation. There is this line in the plastic that goes here up from the top of her mouth up to the top around her eye. I'm not sure how clearly that's coming through on the camera, but there is like this line here, which is kind of, it looks bad. Like it's clearly that they molded that the eyes and the nose separately than the rest of the body, and then like put it together. So that's part of manufacturing. I wouldn't call it a defect, but it doesn't look good. It's like, if anyone here collects the Pixar Cars toys, back when they used to have the mouths, we got mouth plates that they just attach separately. It's like that. It does not look good. From a distance, I don't think it'd be too noticeable. When you're up close, it looks bad. So similar to Nemo, we also have a 7-inch scale Dory, which again is tiny. And here she is with her, I'm honestly not sure what type of coral this is. From Finding Dory, this wasn't the first movie, it was in Finding Dory. Well, the character herself is obviously from both movies, but debuted in Finding Nemo. Dory was a bit bigger than Nemo. Her 7-inch figure actually had the same points of articulation as the 4-inch scale figure that we're looking at now. Although, unlike Nemo, the 7-inch scale figure is, the 4-inch scale figure is actually a scaled up version of the 7-inch figure. This is so weird that I'm saying that. So, unlike when you have something like Mr. Incredible, where you take the 7-inch scale figure that's bigger and you make a smaller one out of it, that's basically the exact same. I'd say this is actually better in that you're taking one that's smaller, even though it's oddly from the bigger scale, and making it bigger. So I'd say that's a plus, in that if you're just displaying the figure without wanting like the different types of coral around it, I'd say that's a plus, and that's bigger. If you're a kid, bigger is definitely better for kids. These 7-inch ones are actually fairly small. So this is one of the few times where I'm fine with them just doing a copy and scale up. Just like a copy paste scale up like in PowerPoint or Word. I'm fine with that here. It's stuff like Mr. Incredible and Wall-E where it's a problem. Last but not least, from the figures I'll be reviewing today, we have Pearl from Finding Nemo. This is the only figure I will be reviewing today who does not have a 7-inch counterpart. This is her first time being made from Mattel, at least recently. I honestly don't know if they ever made her when Finding Nemo first came out in 2003. But at least as of the 7-inch scales and 4-inch scale lines of the past 5 years, this is her first time being made from Mattel. So Pearl actually does not have any points of articulation. She is like Jack in that she just sits here and doesn't actually move. I was hoping that there are tentacles. I was hoping they'd be a little bit like soft, but they're not. They're like the same type of plastic, which isn't a huge deal. I mean, it does help her stand better, I think, when it is the harder plastic, but I think, like, obviously in the movie, like, when she's twirling like that, I think it would be good if they were softer so the tendrils would move a little easier. But nonetheless, this is a nice figure. She does have a nice expression. And there is some nice texturing down here. I don't know how well it comes across on the camera, but it's like there's these different like dots that you can actually feel. So it is like a nice texture that they have on there. They didn't have that type of texturing on any of the other Nemo figures from the 4-inch scale. Comparing her to the 7-inch scale line, just so you could see, she is like as tall as the anemone is from the 7-inch scale line. So that is obviously pretty big. So when I was posing the figures for the end of for the outro, I actually was able to get Mr. Incredible to stand without his stand, which is great. I don't know how long he'll stand for, but I was able to make it happen, which is great. So anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of these figures, that you'll be picking anything up, how you feel about how you feel about Mattel having switched over to a 4-inch scale line, where it's a lot of it's just copy paste and scaled down from 7-inch line. What do you think about Dory being actually a scaled up version of her previous Featured Favorites release, or having Parr being a brand new release that Mattel has not done previously in the 7-inch scale line? So let me know what you think about all this, and if you'll be picking any of these up. And make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon for another review. Bye now.